Hello. Um, I hope you are all here for the College Connection Center workshop on how to pay for college and all things financial aid. I'm going to work through a couple different things, so feel free to ask questions as we go, or just wait until the end. So to start, my name is Madeline Wiskowiak. I am a college and career advisor in North KC at Winnetonka High School. I personally graduated college from Northwest Missouri State with less than $12,000 in debt. So that does mean that I did take it out. That is also very doable for me to get that forgiven and stuff, and to pay it off. And I was Pell Grant eligible. So I didn't come from a family of wealth. My parents did not contribute to my college going experience. And that's kind of how it worked. I did use my Pell Grant and I did qualify for it every single year. You do have to apply for it every year, but we'll get into that later. Just a quick overview on what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over different types of financial aid. We are going to go over understanding financial terms. I know for me, when I was going through this, a lot of these were really confusing. And I'm going to explain the cost of attendance. So you might have, if you have applied, you might have seen a letter from it, and it's going to have a COA, and we're going to go through that. We're also going to go through how to save while in college. It is very possible to save. It doesn't seem like it, but you can save while in college. And then maybe one of the biggest things is to explore resources available to you, especially from your colleges. They do invest in these, and they do want you to save and to not go broke. So financial terms. Hold with me. So the biggest one you might have heard, but I'll go through this quite a bit, is the FAFSA. So that is your free application for federal student aid. What that means is that is the number one way that people pay for school. You need to file your FAFSA every single year. And again, we'll get into that. But when I say FAFSA, that's what I mean. EFC. EFC and SAR, actually, those terms are going to change next year. But for right now, these are the current ones. EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. So this is used by the FAFSA to determine financial need-based aid. And again, we'll go into that. But when I say EFC, that's what I'm going to talk about. Your SAR. This is super important. This is your student aid report. So this is the summary of your FAFSA. So you file your FAFSA and you get something called your SAR. So when I'm saying SAR, I'm talking about that financial summary. Your COA, cost of attendance. I kind of mentioned a little bit briefly, but that's what that is. And verification. Some of you might have been verified if that's the point where you are. Verification is kind of a random audit of FAFSA. Kind of random, but sometimes not. Okay, so types of financial aid. There's 4 major types. So one, and this is the one we want first, is grants. So that is need-based money that you don't want to repay. That's going to be like your Pell Grant. You might receive that as a scholarship or something like that. Our second one is scholarship. So this is something that you get either automatically based off of your GPA, anything like that. This could also be need-based scholarships. These are ones you might have applied for privately. These could be from your institution. When I say scholarship, I'm just kind of rounding up to that. You may have received scholarships at the end of the year. You maybe didn't. You can also apply for scholarships throughout your school year, whether you're going to community college, trade school, anything like that. You can continue to receive and apply for scholarships, and you should. I received most of my scholarships actually just sophomore year onto my senior year. Okay. Work study. So this is a opportunity where you work on campus and then you get paid. You have to do that through the FAFSA. It's a really great way to go. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we cover the FAFSA. Questions so far? Okay. Federal loans. This, I think, is maybe the most confusing. You've probably heard about it, but it seems, I had never taken out a loan at this point. I had taken a car loan or anything like that. So loans, you do have to repay. Okay. So our first top 3, you don't have to pay back. Those are free. This bottom one, you have to pay back. All right. Again, we are going to go into that, but just hold tight. Okay. FAFSA. This is super, super important. If you haven't filed your FAFSA, you really need to. All right. Your FAFSA is going to look at 3 main things to determine that EFC that I talked about. So they're going to look at income. So whether that's you and your parents' income, how much did you make in 2021? Dependents. So do you have any other Do your parents have any other siblings? Do you have any kids yourself? Those are going to be dependents that you financially provide for. All right. And then the number of dependents in college. Do you have an older sibling that's in school? Anything like that. All right. What is going to happen is the FAFSA is going to look at all three of those major things, and they're going to determine your financial need. And so that's going to turn out to be your EFC. What that is going to be, you could be granted the Pell Grant, which is free money that you'll never have to pay back. Again, we want those grants first. 2, you're going to be granted subsidized or unsubsidized student loans, which is probably the main thing you've heard of, and then that work study. The big difference on that work study is that unlike working at McDonald's or something like that, when you have a work study, they can't schedule you, they legally cannot schedule you during a class, okay? That's a pretty big difference. You might make more at McDonald's and decide that, but there is a freedom that McDonald's is going to schedule you whenever they want. Because this is a federal one and they cannot legally schedule you, you're never going to get scheduled during a class period. And so that's kind of one of the big perks. Questions so far? All right. For those of you who have filed your FAFSA, you might be in that boat where you go, I filed, but it hasn't processed. It's not on my student aid, like it's not showing up in my bill. I don't understand. I think I have financial need, but I don't see it. First thing, don't give up. Please don't do. This is a really great thing. I still want to make sure we're doing it. So I've got a couple major things that I want to suggest. First, log into your FAFSA and check your SAR, that student aid report. This is going to be really, really beneficial to knowing if you sent that to your college. All right, that's super important. Sometimes if your college hasn't processed your FAFSA, it's because they haven't gotten it. 2, it's going to show if maybe a signature was missing. It also might show if you didn't actually complete it. All right. So logging into your FAFSA and checking your SAR is a really great first step. If you forgot your password, your email, anything like that, please just go through the process of clicking forgot my password, forgot my username, something like that. When you set up your FAFSA, when you set up your ID and everything, there was all of those saves, those like protections. This is when you might need to use those. All right. Again, please go through this because this is free money on the table, and I really don't want to see any of you miss that. The second thing I suggest is to check your college student account. Usually, most of the time, there's a main page that will have like a little flag or a notification that has any verification forms that need to be filled out. I personally had to do a verification form most of my years, and I had to fill that out and send that into my college, which was Northwest. I know that UMKC, Mizzou, and some of the other major ones, they all look alike and they actually have a spot within their account that you can submit those forms. That could be anything from proof of your social security card to your residency, just to proving that all of the people who are in college are there. So it could be any of those things. All right, this one's really important. The next one is special circumstance appeal. So with the special circumstance appeal, is for those of you who go, I filed my FAFSA, but it doesn't reflect what I'm at. So maybe that means I filed my FAFSA with 2 parents and I only have 1 parent that takes care of me. Or I have since left, and so I need to change that. You would go through your college, that financial aid department, and file a special circumstance appeal. All right. All of these things, I really want to make sure that you're able to get help when you need to. One of the best ways to do that is to call and work with your financial aid office. Seriously, call them. They're really great. They're going to look up your account. They're going to look up your FAFSA, and they're going to change things from their backside. That's a really great way to work. I highly, highly recommend it. Not only do I recommend it, I know you have to do it for certain things. Also utilize some CCC virtual advising through our Zooms. All of the advisors know how to help you in these things. They're going to help you file a special circumstance appeal. It can seem really daunting, but it can also be really rewarding. I've had multiple students that have filed a special circumstance appeal, maybe because of the death of a parent or something, and they did get all of that money and ended up getting the full free tuition. So it is really worth your time to at least see if you can do that. Okay. I'm going to pause. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. All right. This next part is types of loans. All right. It seems scary, and I really want to emphasize that they're not. You really do prefer, you would want a federal student loan first, before you go for private. And I'm going to explain why in just a second. But we have a couple of major loans that you can take out. Your first, and this is the one you want the most, your federal subsidized. Think of subsidized as stopped. Okay, so it's not accruing interest while you're in school. Federal unsubsidized means that it is accruing interest while you're in school, but typically they have a lower interest rate, so you still want that. Those two, the federal subsidized and unsubsidized, you get, and you do not need a cosigner. So my parents didn't have great credit, so that was really important for me. The other thing you do need to think about, and it's typically required depending on the school, is that you do need to complete on the studentaid.gov website, you need to complete entrance counseling. That's going to be loan entrance counseling, something like that. It'll be up there. It probably takes about 20-30 minutes. This is really to make sure that you were taking out loans and you know what you're doing. Sometimes people are like, well, I didn't know what I was doing. This is literally the government saying, please, we're going to train you on this. So please don't just skip through it. This is a really good thing. Don't skip through it. Take your time, try to read through it, watch the videos, all of those things. Okay, so that's what you can take out as a student. Your parents can take out the federal Parent Plus loan. All right, this might need a cosigner. This will probably have them look at their credit. This is not always an option for every parent, and not every parent is willing to do this. All right, I do understand that. Your interest for the parent does accumulate. For all of the federal loans, the interest rate is fixed. So that means for the entire lifetime. So if you have it for 50 years, that interest rate is not going to go up. Private loans are a whole different ballgame. Okay. The interest rate may accumulate. It may not accumulate while in school. It could be fixed. So it means that it's not going to go up for the lifetime of the loan, or it could go up every 5 years. It could go up every 2 years. And it may also need a cosigner. More than likely it will. If you were looking at a private loan because that's what you need, I recommend shopping around. Always shop around when you're looking for those loans. Look at different banks. Always start with your own bank because you're probably most comfortable with that. But after that, shop around. That's kind of my big advice on that. It's going to look different depending on where you're trying to go. Schools might offer something too. So it's going to look a little bit different. I do want to make sure that everybody, again, I was talking a little bit that lifetime. Federal loans typically have a lifetime of 10 years. So on average, most people are able to pay them off in 10 years. When people are talking about that overwhelming amount of debt, they're usually talking about private student loans. All right. The other big thing, super, super, super big, you must be enrolled at least part-time to receive them. You will not get your Pell Grant or anything like that if you're not enrolled at least part-time. All right. Okay. That's something I feel like a lot of people don't know, is that you do have to meet a 2.0 requirement, at least. And then you also have to be enrolled. The less classes you take, the less amount of money you receive. So it's not like I'm taking 2 classes and I receive the full Pell Grant. That's not how it works. It decreases as your classes decrease. Also, unless you're independent, and if there's any independent students, we'll talk about that later if you want to. The max amount you can take out is $5,500 of federal unsubsidized or subsidized loans. Now, for a lot of you, and for a lot of people, that is not enough. And that's when we start looking at the federal Parent Plus and private loans. Okay. All right. I know that was a lot, but this is really important for this next little bit. Ooh, let me go back. All right. So some of you may have ever heard of the cost attendance. That was that COA term I used earlier. So when we're talking about the cost of attendance, a college is going to take into account everything, but we have what we call our direct cost. So that is going to be your tuition and fees and potentially your housing. Those are ones that they know from the get-go, like from the beginning, what you were going to have to pay. Okay. If you were a freshman and deciding to live on campus, or you decide to live on campus at any point in your college career, you're also going to have housing. Those are also going to be direct costs that are not going to change. All right. Now, if only we ever think about our direct costs, we actually can't afford college. Because if all I think about is my tuition, I haven't thought about where am I going to live? How am I going to pay for food? My books, my textbooks, my laptop, my transportation. And so those are what colleges consider into their cost of attendance in their indirect cost. Now you control the indirect cost. All right. Sometimes they're called variable costs because you vary it. Maybe you are a person that wants to walk to school and you can do that. Maybe you are borrowing textbooks and you're really savvy. Maybe you went to a college where that's built into your tuition. any of these things you vary. You'll find with meal plans that you can actually vary what type of meal plan you have. And you can change that meal plan semester to semester as well. I do want to make sure that we know that because sometimes I think we think, oh, this is what I'm doing. And then I'm going to eat so much. And then you realize I actually don't like the food and I don't want to pay that full cost, but I'm still required to have a meal plan. You can go back and take that and turn it down. Okay. Does that make sense? So that's what colleges are looking at when they're looking at the cost of attendance. All right. Okay. At some point, we need to also discover how do we have the cost of attendance, and then how do I know how much loans to take out? I personally was not aware, but I'm going to try to break it down, right? Tuition and fees. So those are those direct costs. I'm going to include dining and housing because as a freshman, you typically do. And those are, again, tuition. Notice that I'm not including transportation or my textbooks or something like that, because again, those are variable. We don't know what those cost yet. Minus gift aid. So this could be federal grants, any scholarships, any potential scholarships from the institution, from private, anything like that. All right. That's what I'm talking about when I say gift aid. What you're going to do is you're going to minus that, minus your gift aid. Sometimes it's already laid out in your, what's the word? Your financial aid package. Sorry. That's already sent to you. Sometimes that's in your student portal. Sometimes like it's mailed to you. And so most of the time they minus those. All right. And what you're going to get is your out-of-pocket expenses. All right. Those out-of-pocket expenses is what you have to figure out how to pay, whether that is through self-pay. So that's through your own savings, your parent savings, grandma and grandpa, something like that, or you're utilizing loans. All right. Oftentimes that is taking out some loans, but we're taking that out-of-pocket expenses that we get from the tuition minus gift aid, and we're using that to determine how much loans we need to take. So you might determine that I can take out $5,500, but all I really need to take out is $1,000. You might talk with your parents and look at your own savings and determine, well, I want to pay $2,000 from my savings and $1,000 to my loans because I want to have extra. That's something that you need to determine as you're looking through it. All right. One second. I'm working.
Like, what you doing?
I'm being recorded right now. Sorry about that. So another thing to think about is also payment plan options. This is one of those things you also work on through your financial aid department. This is something I think that not a lot of people know about, but every department is going to have payment plan options. This is something that you really should utilize. Nobody's taking out like nobody's buying a car without thinking, oh, I'm going to take it out in segments. Because that's how you would normally do that. And so you do want to look at payment plan options, especially if you're having to take out a considerable amount. Okay. All right. So moving on to the next part is, how do I save while in school? All right, there's a big difference between financial aid and financial wellness. Financial wellness is typically going to continue for the rest of your life. All right. And then financial aid is specifically managing aid applications and qualifications. Financial wellness is, how do I budget? How do I reach my goals? Things like that. Some schools are going to have financial aid offices and financial wellness offices. The financial wellness offices help you budget. They help you check your credit. They help you apply for scholarships and fill out the FAFSA. The financial aid office can also do scholarships and FAFSA, but the financial wellness one is a little bit more geared specifically to the student. Okay. Questions on that? All right. Next, this is the part where it gets less exciting. First and foremost, this is creating a budget. Sometimes that budget word sounds really awful. That just sounds really awful to me. So I also want to phrase it as spending plan, because you know you're going to have that money and you know you're going to spend it every month. And so maybe that's like a little bit nicer, because I think, oh, how am I going to spend my money tonight? In order to develop that budget or that spending plan, you first need to understand how much income. I mean, you would be amazed by the amount of people who do not know how much income comes into their bank account every month. All right. So starting with that. for you as a student, that is probably going to be looking at if you're working, what that's going to look like. If you're receiving any refund check or anything like that, those are going to be your income. I've kind of got like a generic basic income set up here and budget expenses. And I'll talk a little bit through that, but really this can look different for every person. And then you're also going to know your expenses. So that's probably going to be rent. All right. Groceries, utilities, phone bill, insurance if you're having to pay insurance, gas those are all your fixed expenses or your expenses. There are things that are expenses, but they don't occur every single month. So maybe in the October month, you have a lot of weddings you have to go to, and those you have to budget in wedding gifts. That was a real thing I did not think about. Okay. So those are expenses that are going to change from month to month. And so that's why I've got that, like that month part, and you're going to go into that. Okay. Questions so far? All right. We also have SMART goals. So when we are creating our budget, we know that we want to get to so much money at the end. All right. So we want to save, or we want to be able to pay our bill. So I want to make sure we're using SMART goals. Has anybody heard of SMART goals before? It's pretty common, but maybe we haven't. I'll go through it either way. Okay. So SMART goal stands for specific. So it can't just be, oh, I want to, at the end, just be like very wealthy. Well, that's not very specific. It could be, I want to save for a trip during spring break to go to Florida. It's a very specific goal. Great. Measurable. So we can measure our plane ticket. So let's say I'm specifically saving for the plane ticket and my hotel or whatever rental it is. All right. So we can measure that goal right there. Achievable. Is it achievable? Hopefully it is, but after we look at our budget, we can determine if it's not. All right. Relevant. Relevant is a little bit more subjective, but for sure important. And then time bound. So we need to have a deadline, but we want to make so much, save so much by this point. All right. Does that make sense? You vary how much your income is and how to get there, either between your expenses, so you can decrease your expenses or you can increase your income. You might be in a situation where you need to do both. So for instance, I decreased my expenses by getting rid of Netflix. I increased my income by doing some work study on campus with tutoring and things. All right. So I'm affecting my budget to get to my SMART goal at the end. Okay. What I like about this planner is it's really simple. It's really straightforward. You can use it if you're a pencil paper person, if you want to type it in. There are really great Excel spreadsheets. All of those things. This is pretty basic and simple. If you're a person that already budgets, you already know these things. We'll go into that. You can use a pie graph. That's one of my favorite ways. There's a lot of different ways to budget or to have a spending plan. Resources. Oh my goodness, please, please, please use your resources. Okay. Please, please, please use your financial aid and wellness office. Seriously, if you have any questions, they are there. They are being paid by your tuition to help you. Not using them is really kind of like losing money because you were already spending that in your tuition. Utilize a lot of different budgeting apps. I've listed a bunch over here. And I also have some financial resources and trainings. So some of these bottom ones like Charitable Foundation, PWC, that'll help you with that. Zogo is a really popular one you might see on the TikToks and Instagrams and stuff. I've got Mint up here. I've got Good Budget, which kind of does something similar, where it'll also train you as well as doing that. They'll also give you like little points and stuff like that, which is really great. Acorns is one where if you want to actually start that investing process, that's a really good basic way to start. Also, it's also like pretty small, but this is just beginner stuff. These are all really great ways. NGFPF, your college financial aid office or something is also gonna be able to recommend some to those too. Okay. Also do your research on it. There's a lot of great ones out there. I highly recommend that. Okay. Any questions? I've also listed, again, the Zoom over here for any of the virtual advising that'll happen all throughout summer. It's a really great way to get help with that FAFSA, with verifications, with any of how do I do my budget. We're starting to figure those out. Any questions though? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for coming and make sure that you guys are utilizing your financial aid office. Great.